Alright, welcome to the first video of Unit 8, where we're going to be talking about some important vocabulary, and we're going to be getting into our first transformation. So, what even is a transformation? Well, transformation kind of sounds like the word transform, and that's exactly what we're going to be doing. We're going to be transforming or manipulating certain points and figures on the coordinate grid, to get some new images. So some important vocabulary, the first thing we want to talk about are the words pre-image and image. So the pre-image are the original points of a figure before a transformation has been performed. So these points are usually just labeled. They don't have any primes on them. It's usually just A, B, C, D, etc. Now the image are the points of a figure after a transformation has been performed. So these points are usually labeled with those prime symbols. So remember, we have A prime, B prime, C prime. We sometimes might even see A double prime, B double prime, C double prime, or maybe even triple primes and quadruple primes, depending on how many manipulations we are doing. Now, this other term of mapping onto is something that we have seen before. So there might be questions that ask, hey, what's the transformation that maps this figure onto this figure? So how you'll think about this is as, hey, what transformation will get my pre-image to land directly on top of my image? And we've seen this before with triangle congruence, so we're kind of bringing this back into this unit. And last but not least, we have the words rigid transformation or isometry. So what that is, it's a transformation that preserves distance and angle measure. So we're going to be dealing with a bunch of different transformations, and only a few of them are going to be rigid transformations. Another way we might see this, you guys might want to add this, is a rigid motion. All right, so let's get into our first one. So our first transformation is called a translation. So a translation is a slide of a point, a segment, or a figure from one location to another. So how we can think about this is, if you guys ever rode a skateboard before, you guys see this little gif of a skateboarder. That skateboarder is sliding to a bunch of different locations. So that's exactly what we're going to be doing with these points and figures. We are simply going to slide them to a new location. When we slide them to a new location, we're going to slide them in the X direction, so that would be moving left or right. And we're also going to slide them in the Y direction, which would be us sliding them up or down. Now, if you guys take a look at this GIF right here, there are two different transformations, or three different transformations that are being applied to this figure. We're sliding it a bunch of different times. And what you'll notice is that the orientation of the points do not change. So if we were calling this A, B, C, and D, when we translate it, it's going to be A prime, B prime, C prime, and D prime, right? The orientation, the order of that point is not changing because we're simply picking this up and moving it to a new spot. And also what you'll notice is that when we translate a figure and when we slide it around, we are not changing its size or shape. So therefore, a translation is going to be a rigid motion. Now let's get into some notation examples. So you guys might see this little capital T here, and you guys might see two numbers under, and they could be in parentheses or they could not be in parentheses, but what those little numbers represent, again, the big idea for translation is how much is my X coordinate changing and how much is my Y coordinate changing. Now, another notational piece that you guys might see is something that looks like this, where you'll see it's telling us that we are adding or subtracting a number from our X coordinate, and then adding or subtracting a number from our Y coordinate. But again, the major key here is how much is the X coordinate changing and how much is the Y coordinate changing. So let's get into an example. We are finding the image of point A, which is 6, 2. So let's plot that. A is 6, 2, and we are translating under this translation rule right here, where we have T, -2, 5. Now, again, the big idea is how much is my X coordinate changing and how much is my Y coordinate changing? Well, our X coordinate, we are subtracting 2 from that. In other words, we are moving our figure to the left 2 units. Now, our Y coordinate is changing. We have a positive number here. So we are adding 5 to our Y coordinate. And graphically what this looks like is we are going to be moving up 5. So there are two different ways that you can do this. If you have a graph, that's great. If you have a graph, you can simply just take your graph and show this movement. So we're moving to the left 2, which is like that. And then we're moving up 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So our point A prime is going to end up right here. Now, if you don't have a graph, you can simply add things to your coordinate. So for example, that -2, again, represents the change of my x-coordinate. So we might go like this to our x-coordinate. I need to take away 2 from my original x-coordinate. And we need to add 5 to our y-coordinate. So if you do that, you'll get that a prime is 4, 7, which is exactly what you should get if you did it graphically. Now, let's translate a figure. So it's the same kind of idea, but now it says, let's find the image of triangle ABC, where we have A is -2, 4, B is -2, -3, and C is 1, 2. So we have all of these 3 points now, and we are going under this translation rule here. So with this notation, this is telling us So we have all of these 3 different points here, and what this translation rule is telling us, it's exactly telling us what we're doing to our x and y coordinates. So to our x coordinate, what's happening for our image, we are adding 3, or moving to the right 3, and we are taking away 6 from our y coordinates, which also means that we are moving down 6. So again, you can do this graphically or non-graphically. I'm going to do it non-graphically because sometimes that could take a lot of time. So I'm going to list out our points. So A is -2, 4, B is -2, -3, and C is 1, 2. So what we are going to do to each of these is, again, we are adding 3 to our x-coordinates and subtracting 6 from our y-coordinates. So A prime, if we do -2 plus 3, that's going to give us +1. And we are subtracting 6 from our y-coordinate, so that is going to give us -2. So we can go ahead and plot that. Let's use a different color for our image. So A prime is 1, -2, so that's going to be here. Now B prime, again, we are adding 3 to our x-coordinate, so -2 plus 3 is 1, and then we are subtracting 6 from our y-coordinate, which would give us -9. And then for C prime, again, we are adding 3 to our x-coordinate, so that gives us 4, and we are subtracting 6 from our y-coordinate, gives us -4. So if we plot that, it looks like that. And there is the coordinates of our image. So again, the main idea is how much is my x-coordinate and y-coordinates, how much are they changing? Now, the last types of examples are going to be us finding the translation rule. So we can do this graphically and without a graph. So the big idea here is find your points and exactly see how much your x and y coordinates are changing. Now, you only need to do this with one set of points because the translation rule is going to be the same for every point. So what I'm going to pick this point here and this point here. So let's see, how much is my x coordinate changing and how much is my y coordinate changing? So our x-coordinate is how much we are moving to the right or to the left. And the big idea here is we are mapping figure x onto figure w, which means we are starting here. We are starting at this point, and we are going on to figure w. Now, that makes a big difference. So if we're starting on figure x and we need to get to figure w, in the x direction, we are moving 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we are moving to the left 8, and then in our y direction, we are moving down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now this would be so different if it said let's map figure W onto figure X. We would be starting over here, so then our signs would be different. We'd be going up 5 and to the right 8, which would change the signs of these translations. But since we are mapping figure X onto figure W, this is our translation rule. This translation rule applies to all of the other points as well. Now, lastly, let's do this without a graph. So it says, what translation will map point A, 3, 2, onto A prime, which is -4, 7. So again, we want to figure out how much is my x-coordinate changing and how much is my y-coordinate changing. Well, to get from -3 to, or +3 to -4, we need to subtract 7. So my x, I need to take away 7. And our y-coordinate, we're going from 2 we're going from 2 to 7. So what we need to do to get from here to here is we need to add 5. So our translation rule here would be t negative 7 comma 5. And again, some questions might say, hey, find the translation rule and apply it to another point. All we would need to do is take this translation rule and again manipulate those x and y coordinates. So just to wrap up translations, a translation is a point, or a translation is when a point or image changes its location without changing size or orientation. And again, we are just sliding that figure around. We are just manipulating the x and y coordinates by adding or subtracting things from it.